Okay. We are recording. We're going to talk about two areas. That are very important in the study of international political economy. First of all, we're going to look at the institutions that manage international political economy. They're very, very important. And these institutions were established to make it easier for trade to happen. And of course, they have their own criticisms, and one of which is that the institutions are essentially dominated by the advanced industrial countries and generally protect the interests of the advanced industrial countries, or they are accused of being insensitive to the needs of developing countries. You know, that may or may not be true. We also see on the other side where the developing countries themselves, especially through their leadership, are not doing themselves a favor. Okay. Now, but generally, these institutions have, made it easier for countries to trade. One thing that you need to understand is that economic power is not equal among countries. And economic conditions also are not equal in the sense that sometimes countries run into difficulties. And so this is one thing. One thing is just the countries run into difficulties in their ability to participate in the world economy. And so these institutions are set up to assist those that may have difficulty in participating in the world economy. And the difficulties arise in large part because markets are generally unstable. This is number one. Number two, when countries are not equally developed or they have developmental problems internally, that might just make it difficult for them to participate. This is one of them. And the other side of it is that given the equal economic power, some countries will have advantage over others if you really just have what you might call a level playing field, or an unregulated or a system that is not monitored to assist those that may have difficulties. So now the second set of topics we'll talk about then the different approaches, the different analytical approaches to the issues that arise in world trade, or how to manage world trade among nations. Different people have different ideas and different perspectives on how to manage world trade, okay? And others have, and these different perspectives also try to address the difficulties and try to explain these difficulties from different perspectives. And of course, through explanation, the explanations that individuals or groups of individuals have as to how to address the issues that arise, they also affect how they propose that solutions should be developed. So I'm going to screen share by first of all talking about the institutions. Okay. The first set of topics that I'm going to address are the institutions that manage international trade or world trade. Of course, given that there are disparities between nations and disparities or issues within nations, you're going to see that politics plays a role in world trade interactions. And so this is why we'll call this political economy, which is the interaction or the interface, so to speak, the interface of politics and economics. Okay. Now, There are three sets of institutions that manage world trade. The first is the International Monetary Fund. Okay. The other one is the World Bank. And then, of course, finally, you have the World Trade Organization. Between the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, people seem to have some kind of confusion because after when you talk about World Bank, I mean, it's a bank, and so banks deal with money and they dispense money. And then the International Monetary Fund is also talking about money. And so what is the difference between them? Okay. Now, the International Monetary Fund is an organization that oversees the global financial system. Okay. They propose macroeconomic policies for its members and also, deal with issues that arise from exchange rates and balance of payments. So you might think about the International Monetary Fund as being like a central bank, okay? And it helps countries address mostly short-term issues, balance of payments and exchange rates. And essentially, its objective is to stabilize exchange rates and also to lend money to countries when they have short-term problems of balance of payments. And what's balance of payments? Essentially, when a country imports more than it exports in terms of money, so it will now not be able on the short term to be able to pay for its imports because it's importing more than its exports. And what happens is that it spends more money than it brings in. And so it will have a balance of payment, I would say, shortfall. And under those circumstances, it becomes difficult to participate in world trade. And the reason is that the country will not be able to pay for its imports at some point. And so institutions like the IMF step in and try to provide short-term relief. Now, what happens though is that very often these, you might say, shortfalls of foreign exchange can persist for a time. And essentially, if you don't address them in the short term, what could happen is that countries could develop internal crisis because if you're not able to import the things that you need in the country, and you can have economic, I would say, crisis within the country, and that also could lead to serious political crisis. And so, when the IMF tries to assist countries or steps in to assist countries, sometimes they impose conditions. But let me go down to the origin of the IMF. Okay. The IMF was created in 1944, so to speak. Actually, it was the meetings to create the IMF was held in 1944 in a place called Bretton Woods. Then it's a conference. And what happened was that after the First World War, as many people know, the world went into serious economic crisis, which actually became very bad in the 1930s. And so, essentially the world economy collapsed, much like what you saw in 2008 when you had this international financial crisis, or even the debt crisis of the 1980s. And so one way to resolve the problem was that countries met in 1944 and created the International Monetary Fund. And it was called originally the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, essentially, which was an organization of Europeans. The IBRD was actually a European thing. But later on, other countries became members of the IMF. Okay, and so now there were original members of the IMF, which joined in 1945, like I said, mostly the European powers. And then there are ordinary members, all those who became members after that. And of course, these original members wield a lot of influence in the IMF. Now, again, like I said, the purposes include international monetary cooperation, and of course, the ultimate goal is to expand international trade to enable countries to participate in international trade and promote especially exchange rate stability so that, because when you have exchange rate instability, it also creates instability in the economy because prices become unstable, output become unstable, and so you have tremendous difficulty. And so the other thing then is that the International Monetary Fund, helps to smooth, difficulties in the international flow of capital, that is money flowing across countries. So that is what the International Monetary Fund does. Now, it also helps countries to sort of like stabilize payments, issues, so that they make funds available to members. Very often, the whole objective is to smooth economic instability in countries with monetary problems. Now, like I said, when the International Monetary Fund gets involved in other countries' business, they also monitor the economic and financial developments of these countries. And so they impose conditions very often. They impose conditions, sometimes they make countries fix their exchange rates. Sometimes they make them peg their exchange rates. And sometimes they also give conditions to countries, for example, to eliminate price controls, to eliminate subsidies. In that way, they think that those policies that they impose will help the country minimize economic friction within their countries and to develop more. Because now the International Monetary Fund also collaborates with the World Bank. They collaborate with regional banks. Regional development banks are banks within countries that operate essentially the same way that the World Bank operates, which is to assist in to promote economic development. And then this is an opportunity to differentiate between the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Okay. All right. Now, like I said, the World Bank was also created after the Second World War, about 1944, 1945. Now, what is the big difference? Now, when people hear bank, they are thinking about money. When people hear International Monetary Fund, they're also thinking about money. But International Monetary Fund essentially helps with the flow of money. Okay, they help with the flow of money. They make financial transactions between countries smoother, while the World Bank focuses more on long-term loans for long-term development. For example, if a country wants to establish, say, a steel production facility so that they will not have, they reduce their importation of steel from foreign countries, or if countries want to develop roads to facilitate transportation of goods around the country, like a road network. Let's say a country does not have a road network, or a country needs a rail system to move goods and to make things easier within the country. Or a country wants to, say, establish long-term production, say in the area of agriculture. So the World Bank will provide that kind of loan for a country. So this is not about facilitating financial transactions or to deal with balance of payments. No, the World Bank is more for long-term development. Okay, and so in that process, they provide technical support. Let us say that a country does not have the engineers to be able to construct, say, the railroad system that will help to transport goods and make goods easy. Now, constructing communication systems is very, very important. Let us take a large country like Nigeria, where they produce a whole lot of the meat that Nigeria consumes in the northern part of Nigeria, and a whole lot of, say, the foods like yams and cassava more in the southern part of Nigeria. Now, if you don't have a system of transportation that can move these goods from one part of the country to the other, then you will not have efficient production and distribution system for food. And so, I mean, it will be very difficult and things will be very costly just because the transportation system is going to be very slow. And so this is what the kind of loan that the World Bank will provide, and those loans will take a long time to repay. And in the process also, they provide technical assistance. If they don't have the engineers to construct those kinds of transportation systems, then the World Bank will step in. And I see somebody else coming in. Hello, Zoe Mwai. How are you? Just give us a minute to let Zoe in. Hello, Zoe. How are you? Can you hear me? Hello.
Hello.
Yes, hello, Zoe. How are you?
I'm okay.
All right. It must be very late in Kampala right now. Am I correct?
Yes, it's midnight.
Okay, sorry. You just have to bear with us because we're trying to accommodate everybody. Welcome to the class. We have here Rachel Roberts, Rachel Smith from Monrovia. And so now we were talking about the institutions that manage world trade, and we were just talking about the IMF and also the World Bank. We just began to talk about the World Bank, which are two of the three institutions that we want to talk about. And essentially, the IMF helps to facilitate financial transactions and helps to facilitate the flow of capital. And sometimes countries have balance of payments difficulties, and the World Bank will step in to provide loans so as to enable countries to participate in world trade and be able to pay for their imports. And that is quite different from, say, the World Bank. Even though it's called a bank, the World Bank focuses more on providing assistance in long-term economic development facilities, for example, the construction of roads, the construction of medical facilities, where provide technical assistance where countries do not have the kind of manpower. And so, there are two different roles. One focuses on long-term and one focuses on short-term. And again, countries that have exchange rate issues are assisted by the International Monetary Fund. Now, the other institution that helps to manage world trade is an organization that's called the World Trade Organization. The World Trade Organization, it began initially in 1947 and 1940s, after the Second World War, as the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. Okay, and again, it was a European thing, and then other countries began to join. In 1995, the GATT was replaced by the World Trade Organization. And what the World Trade Organization does is that it helps to resolve disputes and it helps to negotiate, interaction between countries And to, of course, establish points of agreement. And over the years, now there have been different meetings of the world what you call rounds of negotiations. Right now we have the Doha round, and the Doha round is focused on agriculture. Okay, and that should tell you, and that Doha round has been there since like 1990s or something like that, and it has taken such a long time. It's taken such a long time to negotiate, and this is because they negotiate issues of, say, reducing tariffs. They negotiate issues of reducing subsidies. They negotiate issues about, free flow of goods and access. These are the kinds of things that the World Trade Organization engages in. And so you can see there are three different roles here. One, the IMF facilitates financial flow. The World Bank provides assistance, loans for long-term development facilities like roads, hospitals, transportation, communication systems, developing production systems, while the World Trade Organization, its role is to try to resolve issues of conflict and also to negotiate between nations. One of the issues, for example, that have been negotiated over time on textiles. One of the rounds of negotiations was on textiles, for example, the Uruguay round. Essentially, the countries, established an office in Uruguay, and they negotiated for numerous years. These negotiations take 10 years, 15 years, 5 years, whatever. And what happened is the developing countries kind of felt like, okay, I mean, we can produce textiles that are easy now. It's not like maybe 100 years ago when the technology for textile production was not, easily accessible. And so they want to develop the advanced industrial nations to give them access so that they can export textiles, something like that. But the current round, which is the Doha round, has been going on for many years. It's a very big sticking point. The focus has been on agriculture and agricultural products and issues of dumping agricultural products in other countries. In fact, one of the examples that I use in introductory economics classes and principles of economics classes about price fixing and price subsidies was the question about Vietnam. Vietnam dumping shrimp, that is fish. Seafood, dumping seafood, shrimps on American markets because the Vietnamese are able to produce them at much lower cost. Nevertheless, they try to undermine prices by dumping their shrimp on the U.S. market, which of course makes it difficult for the producers of seafood, shrimp in particular, in the United States from being able to compete with them. Okay, so this is an example of something to negotiate about. Argentina exports a lot of beef, and if you go back to the 19th century, that's in the 1800s and early 1900s, Argentina was known for really, being a world power in the production of beef. And they are still producing a lot of beef, which they export. And American beef producers, kind of complain that Argentinian beef undermines their ability to produce beef. And of course, American leaders, both political and economic leaders, also feel that, they should minimize the importation of beef from Argentina for the simple reason that they don't want the country to eventually become dependent on Argentina just in case. And so, these are points of negotiation, okay? You can see other points, for example, even in automobiles, I mean, it's not part of the Doha round. Nevertheless, you see there's quite a bit of conflict where the Japanese, want access to the U.S. market. Of course, they do have a lot of access to the U.S. market in the production of automobiles, but the American consumers' preference sometimes for Japanese cars could become a source of contention between America and Japan. Say, hey, wait a minute. And so those can become issues of negotiation. Like I had mentioned the Uruguay round, and the topics on the Uruguay rounds, included, removal of, tariff barriers, non-tariff barriers. It was mostly about textiles and clothing and anti-dumping issues. And so now the Doha round, the emphasis, like I said, is on agriculture. Nevertheless, it's more on market access, eliminating export subsidies, because some countries provide subsidies to their own producers to be able to export their goods to other countries. So now I'm going to step out of this, but I'm going to post these PowerPoint slides for you so that you can see them and see, I used 2 examples here, which, just illustrated for you the Uruguay round, which was many, many years ago. And of course, the Doha round, which is still going on, okay? Still going on around in Doha. They're still talking about it. I don't know how long it's going to take them to complete those negotiations. Again, I just want to run this down quickly. So I'm going to start on the perspectives about international political economy. Okay, and the reason I want to talk about perspectives is that some of the conflicts between countries and within countries, I would say some of the conflicts between countries also arise from issues and conflicts within countries. And so, I mean, you're thinking about, say, 2 households that are negotiating, and they have different perspectives on how to deal with things internally among themselves. And those internal issues will affect the way they negotiate outside. I mean, you take, say, 4 people in one household and 4 people in another household, and say, you have A, B, C, D, and D, E, F, G. Okay. Now, A wants to, say, eat a lot of beef in household number 1. And in household number 2, B also wants to eat a lot of beef. What's going to happen? What's going to happen is that A would want a lot of the beef that is produced to be left for them to eat. But that means you reduce the quantity of beef that you can export to the other side. And so that is going to be a point of negotiation. And so the household number 1 would have to appease Mr. A or A, in order to be able to negotiate effectively with the other household. So internal issues in countries also affect the ability of of each country to negotiate to resolve problems. All right. But again, also issues of methodology of operation can affect the way countries negotiate. Now, there are three different perspectives. Okay, there are 3 different perspectives in international political economy. One is the realistic perspective. The other is the liberal perspective. And the third perspective is the perspective of historical materialism. which people call Marxist. Essentially, in realism, in political realism, the approach within countries, again, the political realism and historical materialism and liberalism, you can say approaches issues within countries that affect the way negotiations are held between countries, okay? For example, America believes in free trade, okay? But even within America, you have, conservatives, and then you have liberals, okay? And the conservatives, believe, first of all, internally, they believe in the economic domination by a few, okay? And then they take that approach when they go outside, okay? So you have to resolve that issue within, say, the United States. And of course, resolving it is not something that is going to be definite. It's not going to be, final, so that the conflict is totally resolved. So it's ongoing, and that affects the ability to negotiate with other countries. But again, the realists, those who believe in realism, what's called, realistic theory of power, also take that approach when they're dealing with other nations. And so realism essentially makes it such that governments must intervene on the behalf of their citizens when they are dealing with other countries. This is number one. Now, realism also is based on the assumption that any kind of interaction between two individuals is based on a zero-sum game where one side must dominate the other side. So there's no such thing as cooperation. And so state power must be used, for example, to ensure that, some countries dominate others. And in that respect, the realists want their governments to help them to dominate other countries. Of course, that's going to be a big issue. And in every sense of the world, this is essentially what's going on. Okay, what's going on is that some countries are dominant. We cannot deny that, but the issue then becomes that these people within different countries want their governments to negotiate in such a way that they are dominant out there. And some of you would agree, that truly, some countries are dominating others, and they are the ones that benefit from international economic activity, international trade. And so the countries that have difficulties essentially are victims of the countries that dominate. And so there's a focus on states, okay? And the nature of economic relationship is really conflictual, it's based on a zero-sum game. And of course, the relationship between economics is simply that economics drives politics and politics drives economics. Again, it's up to you to, and so now the theory of economic organization is that of, what we call mercantilism. But mercantilism essentially is, where a country protects itself from imports and promotes its exports. And when a country promotes its exports, you can see that that country will have balance of payments, positive balance of payments advantages over other countries, okay? When a country has a lot of balance of payments advantage over other countries, then its exchange rate, will also be high, okay? And so, okay. And so the goal is to make the mother country wealthy and other countries less wealthy. This is what mercantilism is about. And those who believe in political realism, which of course, affects their economic thinking, believe in this mercantilist approach. You promote your exports and discourage imports. And when you promote your exports and discourage imports, what do? what you do is you impose tariffs, you impose import taxes, and you're probably going to promote subsidies so as to increase your exports. But then when you impose import taxes or tariffs, as they are called, what happens? Then other countries will not be able to, say Nigeria will not be able to export its goods to America. And if Nigeria is able to produce certain goods in surplus, then it will not be able to export them. And if Nigeria is not able to export its goods to other countries, then it will not be able to pay for goods from other countries. So, and the mercantilist approach is to get the government to negotiate in such a way that the country dominates other countries. Okay. And so that is an approach based on the political perspective, which is based on power relationships. Okay. Well, I mean, some of these issues that you will see here no longer hold. For example, the mercantilist approach was to establish colonies, but then you don't have colonies anymore. So since you don't have colonies, what you could do is to manipulate the politics of other countries, to control and regulate trade, and then they have other countries exporting raw materials to them, which will enable them to manufacture and then to export the finished goods, because that is no longer, the structure of international trade. Nevertheless, it is not completely gone. It's not completely changed. There is still this whole idea of trying to import raw materials from other countries and then export to them finished goods. Now, let us take, say, a country like Jamaica that used to produce or that still produces aluminum. Okay, so what happens? You take say a country like Switzerland. Let's take Switzerland, for example. Now, Switzerland is known for what? It's known for chocolate. Am I correct? But Switzerland does not produce cocoa. Now, yes, Switzerland does not produce cocoa. Chocolate is made from cocoa. Now, so what's going to happen then is that the countries that produce cocoa will export raw cocoa to Switzerland. Then Switzerland will produce the cocoa and will export them. But suppose, however, that the countries that produce cocoa process the cocoa midway before they send it to Switzerland. Then you create more employment in those countries that produce cocoa. You create more employment in those countries. But Switzerland would prefer to import the raw cocoa and do the processing in Switzerland, which creates more employment in Switzerland than in the countries that produce cocoa. So this is the mercantilist view. Mercantilist view is that arrangement of domination by, say, Switzerland over the countries that produce cocoa. Okay, so, but the system is no longer that crude. But given that they say a country like Switzerland imports the raw cocoa and then process it and export it around the world, they also have a favorable balance of payments. Okay. So let's now skip from Switzerland, from mercantilism, just to make this whole process move faster. You can read the PowerPoint slides. They are very easy to understand. So a little bit of history here. Okay. Now, the other approach to economic interaction between nations, the other approach to trade is the liberal approach. And so the idea of liberalism. Okay. Now, liberalism believes that cooperation is better than competition. Liberalism, takes the rational approach that if you can produce the cocoa you know, and you process it, you create a lot of employment, and then you be able to have higher incomes to be able to import goods, that it will then enable those countries that are, can specialize in manufacturing to also, have employment because you can buy more from them if you have higher income. Okay. So essentially, cooperation is, far more beneficial than competition, and cooperation does not, that is trade between nations, should not be based on the attitude of a zero-sum game. Zero-sum game simply means that whatever you gain is my loss, whatever I gain is your loss, and that we can never prosper through cooperation. One side has to be more powerful than the other. But the liberal view is that cooperation is far superior because we can all specialize one way or another. So it's much better to cooperate. And the emphasis here is not on the state, but on individuals and household enterprises. Okay. And again, the liberal view does not believe that. The liberal view simply proposes is based on the idea that governments should stay away from trying to impose their countries on others. Let individuals deal with each other across nations.
On the specialist.
Are you talking to me?
No, Professor, sorry.
Okay. All right. So essentially, the liberal view is based on the idea of what we call comparative advantage, so that each country will specialize and focus on those goods where they can produce much more efficiently than others. And then we exchange, and the outcome will be that we produce more and consume at a better level. And I'll give you an idea. I think I tried to explain it the very first lecture. Let us say that if I can put in 2 hours of labor, okay? I can put in 2 hours of labor and I produce 10,000 pounds of beef, and the other hour I produce 1,000 pounds of chicken, okay? But on the other hand, if you put in 1 hour, you can produce 10,000 pounds of chicken and 1,000 pounds of beef. So what happens here is that between us, if we do not cooperate, if there's no, if we do not apply comparative advantage, we're going to have 11,000 pounds of beef and 11,000 pounds of chicken. Okay. But if I specialize in what I do best, then I'll produce 20,000 pounds of beef and you produce 20,000 pounds of chicken. So between us now, instead of 11,000 of each, now we have 20,000 of each, so we can live better. So that's what cooperation is about. Okay, and that is the whole concept of comparative advantage. And so the liberal view is that individuals across nations should be allowed to interact with each other rather than governments trying to create domination. So the last viewpoint is the viewpoint of historical materialism. Historical materialism simply says that cooperation is not possible. Now, the whole idea is that within each country, there are exploiters and there are the exploited. The working class are the exploited and the exploiters are the capitalists. And so what happens actually is that the exploiters in one country collaborate with the exploiters in another country, and say the exploiters in Nigeria will exploit their citizens and the exploiters in America will exploit their citizens. Okay, please, can we focus on what we're doing? Will exploit their citizens, and so the exploiters across nations are really those that make economic well-being, economic prosperity difficult around the world. Okay, and so they focus on classes. You know, they're exploiting classes in each country, and they simply collaborate with each other. And one manifestation of that, according to the liberal view, according to the historical materialist view, is simply that the manifestation is through, say, multinational corporations. So multinational corporations, for example, they come to Nigeria, they drill the oil, and then they sell the oil to, they take the oil and improve and develop the advanced countries. And what they do is that they go within, say, a country like Nigeria, and they will simply have a small group of people there who are simply happy to be living very well. And so they collaborate with the multinational corporations, or even when you do manufacturing, okay? You have the exploiting class, the capitalist class, go to Nigeria, establish manufacturing facilities there, and employ a few people, have a few people in the upper class, and hire them as managers. And even if they export the goods, only a few people benefit from it. They don't pay attention to environmental degradation like they do in the various countries. And so the whole idea is simply that it's going to be very difficult to develop across countries. Economic development is never going to be equal because the ruling classes simply are out for themselves, and they're not interested in improving the lives of ordinary people. And of course, these are some of the issues that the United Nations development goals try to essentially resolve. Okay, let trade be a way of making sure that poverty is rooted out. Health systems are improved, education is improved, and what have you. And so the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations are designed to resolve this. And so you wouldn't have a system where some people are doing well and others are not. Because we talked about those development goals the last time. I posted the what do you call it, the PowerPoint slides on development goals, and I'm going to post them again. So having said that, having that summarized what the topics of the second week are, so if you have any questions, I will gladly respond to them.
Professor, can I go first with a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Yes, I'm Paulette. Yeah, I started your class a little late because
Okay.
on the 19th. So, and the reason for that was that they dropped my classes for the summer. When I went on Blackboard to start my classes, there was no class. So now I have to call register, and they said that my payment voucher wasn't clear. So I have to resend my union pay for it. So I have to resend my voucher, and then they submit about my class, reinstate them. But they reinstated on the 18th, and Blackboard wasn't still active on the 18th. So I have to call them again so that they could get back Blackboard active to me, so I could do my work. So I really started class on the 19th. So I went ahead and do what I could do, but I saw you mark my grade for lateness was 75%, but it wasn't my fault that I was late. That's what I was just telling you.
Okay. Let me check for a minute. I mean, I hope you don't mind. You're talking about this where others are hearing about your problems, but let me just see. Paulette Williams, you sent me an email.
Yes.
Yeah, but your name is in the class and you're still enrolled. And so I'll just give you the opportunity to catch up. That's it. You just have to catch up.
Okay, and with the quiz, professor, I'm getting confused. I
Okay.
thought that it was the smooth the question with the question actually one of them in the 1930s. I thought the answer would be the smooth hourly tariff, but I got it wrong. And I tried to read over why is it that wrong? I don't understand.
Okay, so send me go to the question and answer folder and raise the question with me, or send me an email and I'll go and check out what you're talking about.
Okay, I will.
All right.
Thank you. I have no, that's not your class. I do two of these classes, 4:30 and 3:30.
Okay, all right. I see you're talking about a WhatsApp group. Well, you know,
Yeah.
this is America, so people have to volunteer to give you the information. And so I think you can go to the email system in Blackboard and ask for those who want to volunteer to join the group. You know, but
Okay.
I cannot initiate it. That would be a violation on my part.
Okay.
All right.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, sir, this is Rachel.
Okay.
Thank you so much for
Okay.
the explanation today.
And please, everybody try to participate in the discussions. I'm going to reopen the second week discussions that are overdue, just as to make sure everybody participates, and also to complete the homework assignments, so that at least we all can learn from it. Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
sir.
All right. Okay. Have a nice evening, everybody.
Thank you, Professor. You too.
All right. Bye.